is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today I kind of want to do a video just talking about the WRX, do a little POV driving, and talk about some things that I like and dislike about the car. So if you're new to the channel, this is my 2021 WRX Premium. If you haven't watched any of my previous videos, just to kind of give an overview of what's done to the car. I've got some MST MT-01s. They're 18 by 9.5 plus 35 offset in matte bronze. The car is currently lowered on Raceland coilovers. Window tint, front license plate delete, and relocating, some emblem overlays. And then the car is stage 1 plus. And for anyone that doesn't know what that entails, it is an access port and the Cobb Big S intake. And then coming around to the back, it has nameless 3-inch muffler deletes, with just the single wall tips, some rock blocks, mud flaps, and then a rear window spoiler. So let's get inside the car. I'm going to talk about a few things that I both like and dislike about the car before we get driving here, and then I'll strap the GoPro to my head and we'll do a little bit of driving. Okay guys, so starting out with the interior here, there's not a whole lot that I really dislike about this interior. Love the steering wheel. For anyone that hasn't driven one of these cars, it's just a super great feeling in the hand. Like the flat bottom. I mean, the dash is kind of a soft touch material, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's like premium quality. This isn't a premium car. Yes, it is a WRX Premium, but you're comparing, say, like a BMW to this, or like a Mercedes or some luxury vehicle. The interiors on those cars are definitely a lot nicer in this. However, that's not saying this is a bad interior. It is, I mean, a great interior. So really, I think my only real gripe about the interior, and this is not something with all the WRXs, the VA chassis WRXs, this is just something in the trim package I particularly have. So as I mentioned, this is a premium trim package. And what that entails basically is it gets sunroof, fog lights in the front. I believe it has a little bit bigger infotainment system. And then in the 2021 models, the limiteds and premiums both got push to start. But one of my big gripes about this car is the cloth seats. They're not bad seats, and there's not anything saying that cloth seats are bad by any means, but I prefer leather. And when I got this car, I actually was hoping to get a limited, but at the time, and even now, there's still such a shortage of cars that I just could not find a limited, and I wasn't going to buy a used one because the used WRXs were the same price, and in many cases actually more than a brand new one. So my next gripe about the interior on this car, and once again, this is just the package that I have this armrest extension, which is great. It's nice because you can rest your arm on there and reach the shifter. That's fantastic. But what happens when they went to the retractable armrest is they didn't do any cord pass-throughs, and on these WRXs, the USB connection and then your auxiliary connection is inside the center console. So that kind of sucks. I mean, I can just pull my cord out and just smash it in there, it's fine. But all the other models that don't have, or at least previous models, maybe this is just a 2021 thing, but all the other cars I've looked at that don't have this armrest extension have cord pass-throughs, and why they didn't do it on this, I'm not entirely sure, because as far as I knew, the only thing that they changed was the top section. So this whole centerpiece shouldn't have changed in theory. That's really it for my dislikes on the interior. I mean, it's not a bad interior in these cars. They are really pretty great. In some of the previous years and previous models, they did do different material on the door cards. This actually has the leather material, or leatherette material. I don't know if it's real leather or not, probably not, which is a nice touch. And it does have the red stitching throughout and up on here, which this is that same material that's on the door panels. This is kind of subjective. I personally like it, some people don't. I do like that they did do the carbon fiber look to these trim pieces on the dash. on that side and that side. Kind of wish they would have carried it into some other locations, but I think it's a nice touch. Yeah, it's not real carbon fiber, but it kind of gives you a little bit more of a premium, I guess, feel to the car. Other than that, really, I don't have too many other gripes about the interior. The seats, I mean, they're not the most comfortable seats in the world, but it's supposed to be a sportier car. They're not supposed to be super plush seats that you'd find in like I don't know, just some luxury vehicle. So, I don't know. They're not the greatest, but not the worst. So yeah, let's get the GoPro strapped to my head. All right, let's get into it here. So as mentioned, on the 2021 models, premiums and limiteds came with push button start. And that is one thing that I really enjoy about this car. Having owned cars in the past with push button start, going back to a vehicle that just has a normal ignition sucks. Some people like it, some people don't. I personally love it. So as you can see here, nothing really has changed too much on the 2021 model. The gauge cluster itself is pretty similar to, actually I don't know if anything's really changed since 2015. The display up here did change, and I can't remember what year it was, but that actually got a little bit bigger. There used to be another screen on this side that showed like your climate control and stuff, and a few other little things. So that's a nice touch, now that it's all a little bit bigger, a little bit more crisper. As far as the infotainment stuff goes, it's pretty similar to what it's always been. I think the screen just got a little bit bigger. And this one does not have the premium sound system, and it does not have navigation, being that it is a premium model. You had to get a limited, and then I think even with a limited, that was another option that you had to get. One other thing I forgot to mention, so if you didn't watch my previous video, the car has a shifter stop and a short throw shifter as well, which I'll kind of talk about here when we get driving. So let's go ahead and get going here. So I'm going to start with the windows rolled down. Hopefully you can still hear me, not too much wind noise. So one of the big things I've noticed going stage 1 plus was the factory tune on these cars really likes to build boost very quickly, which is great because it builds a lot of torque down low. Only problem is, I think it was about 4,500 RPMs, I can't remember off the top of my head, the car would just lose power. If you looked at a torque curve on this car, it builds torque really fast and then it just falls on its face. And that's one of the big complaints about these WRXs. And I don't know if it's the same thing on the STIs, but after I did the stage 1 plus tune, the power delivery is, I'm gonna roll the windows up here. The power delivery is much more linear. It still doesn't have the most top end power, and that's a lot of it's due to a pretty small turbocharger. At the higher RPMs, when it's flowing a lot of air, it just doesn't have the volume to create that power in the top end. Not to say that it doesn't create good power. I mean, for what it is, for a 2-liter boxer engine, I mean, it makes pretty decent power on top of actually getting pretty good gas mileage. And I don't do a whole lot of freeway driving, mostly in town, just driving back and forth to work. And I've seen about an average about 18 miles to the gallon, almost 19. So that's not too bad for a car that makes, I don't know, maybe 280 horsepower or something like that at the crank now. I don't know what the wheel torque is or wheel horsepower is with the stage 1 plus stuff, but it's not bad power. Now, one thing I will say about these cars, and this might upset some people, but these cars, they're not fast. They're not fast by any merit. They're quick, and they're definitely faster than your average just run-of-the-mill sedan, but they're definitely not a fast car. Their biggest characteristic, I think, is they do handle incredibly well. The all-wheel drive system on the Subarus is a fantastic system. Now, if I would have stepped it up and got an STI, that all-wheel drive system is even better. Having the DCCD, you just have so much more control over the torque split, as well as how it just delivers power through corners and stuff. This car does have torque vectoring, which I've never personally pushed the car hard enough to notice it, but I think in like an autocross situation, it might be okay or might work. But it doesn't have anything other than torque vectoring, for which, and for those of you that don't know how torque vectoring typically works on most vehicles, what happens is in a turn, whatever wheel, if it loses traction, essentially, it actually uses the ABS system on the car to apply the brakes to that wheel, which then, because it's slowing down that one wheel, sends more power to the other three wheels, because this car does have an open diff. And it's not a bad system. It works, it does what it needs to do, but it's not definitely as great as the DCCD. But for someone that's not tracking their car or really pushing the car super hard, I don't think you're really going to notice too much of a difference, especially just daily driving and just kind of cruising around, even on back roads, having a little bit of fun. You're probably really not going to notice a difference. Excuse me. So I'm going to get out here to a spot where we can do a little bit of a pull here, so you can kind of hear the exhaust on the inside. But before that, I kind of want to talk about this short throw shifter. As I mentioned before, if you didn't see the previous video, I just installed a short throw shifter, shifter bushing, and a shifter stop. And it completely changed the shifting of this car. It is a lot more crisp. One thing I noticed, and I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, but the shifts feel a lot heavier, which is more than likely due to the fact that the short shift plate reduces the leverage, essentially, that your shifter linkage has, which is inherently going to cause a heavier shifter feel. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it feels great. It feels more notchy, which is a lot to say for a cable transmission or cable shifter. And that's another thing, for anyone that didn't know, the WRX is pretty much, and I don't know what year, I want to say from 08 and on, maybe. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me down in the comments. But they went to a cable operated shifter, whereas previous generations, including even up to the current STI, the 2021 STI, they actually have a shift linkage, and the shifter is essentially attached directly to the transmission, which gives you a little bit more positive shifter feel, I think. But doing the short throw shift plate, shift stop, and shift bushing definitely is something I would recommend anyone do to their car. It changes the feel of the shifting in a very good way, I think. And not that the shifting was terrible to begin with. It definitely could be better, and then this car didn't have the factory STI short throw shifter option that you can get. So the shifter throws were a little bit longer than what they could be, essentially, from the factory. But it wasn't terrible. So let's get on this little back road here. And I'll leave the windows rolled up right now. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. You hear some little bit of popping going on, which I think sounds fantastic. So like I said, these cars, I mean, they handle fantastic. I mean, if you push them hard, you're gonna notice the the weak spots. I believe these cars have a little bit of understeer, being with the all-wheel drive system, but I've never pushed the car hard enough, and I don't really plan on it, especially not on the street. I don't recommend anyone really racing around on the streets. It's not safe. Go to an autocross day if you're gonna really want to push your car. It's a lot safer for you, everyone else, and a lot safer for your car because there's less stuff to run into if you happen to go off the course, or in this case off the road. Alright, I'm gonna roll the windows down here, see if I can get some sound clips for you of that intake. Hopefully, once again, there's not too much wind noise and you can actually hear me. Back up here again because I don't know how much you can actually hear me with the wind noise. One thing I will say is I feel as if almost you can hear more intake noise when the windows are rolled up. And I don't know if these cars have a sound tube or not, but it almost sounds like it does because you hear a lot of induction noise. You can hear the induction noise as you kind of get into the RPMs a little bit. And then you can actually hear the turbo spooling up, which I think is a fantastic sound to listen to. I don't know if you can hear that right now, but... And you can actually hear the bypass valve opening up. And this just has the stock bypass valve right now, which is something I plan on upgrading. I'm not sure which one I'll go with yet. Kind of leaning towards the Boomba one, just because I love the... I don't know if it's actually compressor surge or if it's just the way that the bypass valve is designed. It gives kind of a compressor surge noise, and I really like that. It's kind of ricer, I would say, but the 12-year-old kid in me loves that sound. But yeah, these cars, excuse me once again, allergies are killing me this time of year. But I don't know, I think it's a fantastic car for the money. There's not too many cars out there that give you this driving experience, because for the most part on these cars it's a pretty raw driving experience. There's some nannies on this car, obviously, with the traction control and the torque vectoring and stuff, which you can turn off. It's not something that has to be on. You can disable that stuff. But for the most part, I mean, it's a pretty raw experience. Like, for example, the gauge cluster, they did a lot of a couple analog gauges, which kind of keeps it raw, I think, in that sense. Granted, this is digital now, but if it was one of the older WRXs, it would have been mechanical gauges or electronic gauges. I don't know what they used, but it's definitely a driver's car. Oh, one other thing I kind of want to touch on here, the coilovers. So I've got about, let's see, I've got about 1,500 miles on these coilovers now, and the car has just under 1,800 miles on it at this time. I can't say enough good things about the coilovers for the price. I know a lot of people kind of discredit Raceland and think of it as a really cheap brand, and that's all they think. They think cheap, so it's poor quality, which is not the case. I've ran Raceland coilovers on many vehicles in the past, and I have not had a single complaint about any of them. The Raceland customer service is fantastic. If you have a question, they're quick to respond, and their warranty is, I mean, one of the greater warranties out there as far as aftermarket suspension components go. Even a lot of the bigger name brands, they don't offer the lifetime warranty on stuff like these coilovers have. As far as how the car handles, as far as like bumps and stuff, it's definitely a little stiffer than the factory suspension. However, it's not so stiff that it's completely jarring. These coilovers do not have dampening adjustment. They didn't offer that option for the VA chassis, but they're tuned so well that I don't think it's really a problem, at least in my case. I don't track the car, so all those fine levels of adjustment I honestly probably wouldn't use anyways. Now as far as like handling in corners and stuff, it definitely, I mean, naturally when you lower a car, it reduces the center of gravity, brings the mass down low, which in turn gives you better cornering, less body roll, and I think that the coilovers are definitely really noticeable as far as helping with that. Other than that though, that's kind of about it. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. So I kind of give a recap here. I think the WRX is a fantastic car for the money. You get a lot of performance for a pretty reasonable price, really. Now that being said, with the car shortage due to the whole chip shortage thing, the price has kind of gone up on the cars, but normally they are priced pretty well, and the performance that you get with that price I think is fantastic. I really don't have too many complaints on my car. Definitely recommend doing some sort of tune on the car if you're not afraid of voiding your warranty. There's a little bit of a risk and reward there. Now I think the risk is worth the reward because the factory tune on these cars is not the greatest, and for anyone that hasn't driven these cars, try to go take a test drive on one. You'll know what I'm talking about. They have great power down low, and then they fall flat on their face in the high RPMs, and it's due to a few different things. Like I said, the turbos are small on these cars, so they're not going to create the volume of air that a bigger turbo would, which inherently is going to create less power up top. But just going with the Cobb Stage 1 Plus package, so it's, like I said, the Cobb Big SF intake and the access port, definitely changed the car a lot, and for the good, or the better I should say, not for the good. The power is definitely more linear, and it carries power all the way out to redline now. And if you look at dyno sheets, they do kind of drop off near the top, which is to be expected. Once again, small turbo, and they just don't flow the air to make the power up top. But overall, fantastic car, highly recommend it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I do have some future plans for the car. For anyone that hasn't watched any of my previous videos, got a J-pipe in the works. I'm going to be going with a catted J-pipe just to eliminate the problem of boost creep. And some people will say that boost creep isn't an issue on the FA series, but it is. It does happen. It might not be as bad as the previous generations with the EJ motors, but it still is a thing. In colder climates, I think it's worse, and it doesn't really get that cold in Washington where I live, but I would just rather not have to deal with the issue. You could make the same amount of power with a catted J-pipe to a catless J-pipe. There really isn't a concern of power, and I don't plan on making a ton of power with this car. I think my goal long term is to make, I don't know, 320 to 330-ish wheel horse, and I think that's more than enough for a fun little daily car. You really don't need much more power than that. Would I like to have like 400 or 500 horsepower? Yeah, that would be fun, but it's not needed. I mean, you just think about it. When you're out on the street, you really can't use all that power, so it's kind of pointless unless it's a dedicated track car. I don't know, not saying that you can't use the power, but it's kind of pointless. But J-pipe, as I mentioned, aftermarket bypass valve, which I think I mentioned in the video. Probably, and let me know down in the comments below what you think. I'm kind of torn between going with a top mount intercooler or a front mount. I think front mounts obviously are more efficient, but for the power levels I'm shooting for, I don't really know that it's all that necessary. And having, less piping to deal with on top of cheaper components, and I don't know. Let me know down below what you think, if I should go front mount or go with an aftermarket top mount intercooler. But beyond that, mid pipe be the next thing after the J-pipe, and a 3-port boost controller. And actually, before some of this other stuff, I really need to get an air oil separator on the car, just for a kind of a preventative mod. If you didn't know, the FA series motors is a direct injection motor, and they have a nasty problem with carbon buildup on the intake valves due to just how direct injection works. And the PCV systems on these cars, on any car really, it's gonna inherently send oil vapors into the intake track, which is not the greatest thing, for a couple different reasons. Obviously, the intake valves is one, but also it lowers your octane level on your fuel, which can then cause knock and detonation, all that stuff, which is not good. So an air oil separator, if I could talk, is definitely on my list of things to get done as soon as possible. Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I tried to make it shorter, but ended up being a little bit longer than I had intended. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked the video, smash that like button. It lets me know that you like the content I'm creating. Once again, comment down below if you have any questions or any suggestions on stuff. I'm open for suggestions. And then, once again, if you like the content you're seeing, hit that subscribe button. You'll be notified every time I post a video. I'm going to try to be posting videos at least once a week, if not more. It just depends on my work schedule, which is usually pretty busy, but I'm going to try to get content out for you guys to watch. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you in the next one.